Mr. May is president of the Air Transport Association of America. Mr. May, thank you for coming and welcome.
Governor. Should I begin, sir?
Yes, please.
Good. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I am Jim May, President and CEO of the Air Transport Association of America. I will go through my statement in a fairly rapid fashion so that you can proceed with the activities of the evening. On behalf of the ATA, let me begin by thanking this Commission for the service it is performing. I don't think there's any higher goal than ensuring we learn everything possible.
Could you maybe get a little closer to the microphone?
Sure, I can.
People having trouble hearing.
How's that?
Much better. Thank you.
On behalf of the ATA, let me begin by thanking the Commission for the service it's performing. I don't think there can be any higher goal than ensuring we learn everything possible from the events of 9/11. When I joined ATA about 3.5 months ago, one of the top priorities I was given by our board was to build on the relationship with the TSA. And in coming to better understand the TSA/industry dynamic, I've been briefed on the history of the relationship between government and the airlines regarding security, both before and after the events of 9/11. On that basis, let me offer a few observations relevant to your inquiry. On 9/11, the airlines administered an aviation security program directed and approved by the FAA, which originated 30 years earlier and had been developed fundamentally to avert the threat of a conventional hijacking that I think has been referred to earlier today. This system was specifically designed as a, according to statute actually, prevent or deter system, and was not a more intrusive prevent and detect system. The system was designed by the government to screen passengers and their hand luggage for various prohibited items, predominantly weapons, but including an array of other weapons and devices. These items were believed by the FAA and law enforcement to be the likely tools of choice for a hijacker. In the event of a hijacking, the policy, which reflected the government's long-standing assessment of how to respond to such situations, was one of cooperation. In addition, in cooperation with the government, the industry was engaged in deploying and testing various explosives baggage screening technologies to avert the threat of terrorist bombings of aircraft. Under the Security Equipment Integrated Product Team Program, which was established in the mid-1990s, approximately 160 explosives detection machines purchased by the FAA were installed and utilized by the airlines to both screen for explosive materials and provide real-world testing of technologies that have been certified under laboratory conditions. While with tragic hindsight, we can now see that pre-9/11 government security regimes in totality did not anticipate the kind of attack that we experienced. I am aware of no deviation from the established screening laws and regulations in effect on 9/11 that contributed in any way to the terrorist attack on the United States. Now, let me be candid with regard to the reported role of box-cutting devices in the attack. Under pre-9/11 FAA regulations, only, quote, knives with blades 4 inches long or longer and or knives considered illegal under local law were prohibited. Under a non-regulatory checkpoint operations guide, or COG, developed by the FAA, the Regional Airlines Association, ATA, with FAA approval, interpreting FAA regulations, box-cutting devices were considered a restricted item posing a potential danger. This meant that if such a device was identified, it could be kept off the aircraft. The FAA mandated metal detection walkthrough systems, however, were designed and tested to detect metallic items about the size of a small handgun or larger. Therefore, the pre-9/11 screening system wasn't designed to detect or prohibit these types of small items, and I don't think we have any information indicating they were in fact identified in the 9/11 screening of the terrorists. Prior to 9/11, there had not been a hijacking of a U.S. carrier since 1991. In the 3 years prior, there had been 3 hijacking events involving U.S. airlines worldwide. In 2001, prior to 9/11, the FAA had issued 15 information circulars, ICs, relating security information to the industry. Now, those ICs, as you probably are well aware, are used to communicate routine, non-specific security information. Of these, 4 mentioned the term hijacking, 3 of them making a generic reference to the threat, and 1 providing a more descriptive reference to a conventional hijacking concern. Beyond this, there was no general and industry intelligence threat briefing conducted during the period, and no relevant security directive was issued. An SD generally deals with more definite threat information warranting modification of security procedures. Finally, if the FAA had more specific credible threat information directed at a specific airline, it would have been communicated through an STU and directly to that airline. At ATA, we are not aware of such communications. Now, post 9/11, the world changed. Legislation establishing the TSA put aviation security directly in the hands of the government. The events of 9/11 changed the threat equation, which TSA is now dealing with, and they are meeting the challenge with the full cooperation and support of our industry. In the 20 months that have passed, the entire aviation security regime has been revamped in response to a new threat. All cockpit doors have been hardened to withstand an attack. Federal air marshals have been deployed in substantial numbers, and more recently, armed federal flight deck officers have begun to be introduced into the system. New and improved training programs for crew members have been developed, approved, implemented. TSA conducts all passenger and baggage screening using procedures and equipment appropriate to newly identified threats. All checked baggage is subject to explosives detection screening. TSA is working with the airlines to develop information technology, taking advantage of known passenger information to better determine where to focus its screening resources. Behind the scenes, intelligence priorities and practices of government have shifted dramatically. Finally, of course, the mindset of the government, airlines, security screeners, cockpit and cabin crews, and society at large has been permanently changed by the events of 9/11. The government's newly intensified intelligence focus is particularly important. The government has at its disposal the tools necessary to identify, assess, and address or resolve evolving threat situations in a manner which really was impossible under the bifurcated government-industry relationship that existed prior to 9/11. And while no one would suggest that the current system has completed its development, it's strong and growing better every day with experience and with testing. As to the future, the airlines industry has long been on record that advocating over time the TSA security system evolved to focus more intensively at looking at people rather than searching solely for things. The events of 9/11 make that lesson inescapable, and as I mentioned, TSA is moving in that direction through the development of a more sophisticated computer-based technology, the so-called CAPS-2 system, that will complement and facilitate even better use of the physical screening resources. The second inescapable lesson from 9/11 is the imperative for aggressive collection and analysis of intelligence, always searching for new and evolving threats. Because of the historic pattern of terrorist targeting of aviation as a surrogate target for the United States, the airline industry has long sought intelligence resources dedicated to identifying and resolving terrorist threats to aviation. In the post-9/11 world, clearly, those resources are being utilized by the TSA as an activist consumer of intelligence information, and it is our belief that today intelligence's flow and analysis has improved dramatically. This reorientation is indispensable. Deterring future acts of violence against U.S. civil aviation cannot occur without meaningful real-time intelligence assessments. It is imperative that in the future we recognize that the public interest demands an aviation security system that effectively deploys a prudent mix of technology and procedures capable of counteracting all vulnerabilities. The system must recognize that evolving threats require a continuous and accurate reassessment process guided by the best available information. The system must recognize as well that undue reliance on one or two technologies or procedures invites failure. Security must evolve and adapt to meet the changing nature of the threat. In conclusion, I would like to again thank the Commission for its important work and reaffirm our commitment to work unceasingly with the government to provide a safe and secure air transportation system upon which the public and our nation's economy can and should rely. Thank you.